Hello again, friends. I have exciting news. I have created a Patreon page. Well, I have started creating a Patreon page. What I mean to say is that I have all the basic info in a Patreon page, but then I got to the tier part and I ran into two problems. One, why would anyone pay $3 a month for what I give them for free anyway? And two, what could I possibly offer as a Patreon bonus? I already read any stories requested of me, and we all saw how well that worked out with some children who played at slaughtering. My cameraman suggested I offer bloopers. Lord knows I make enough of those to fill an entire channel. Why, the entire last video I did without the microphone on. Anyway, I am still on the fence about this whole thing. It may have something to do with my crippling self doubt and imposter syndrome, but I still see no reason for anyone to want to pay for this. So I leave it up to you, my dear friends. Please tell me what you think. And to show how much I love you, I will finally read Rapunzel right after I read this request from Ed. The cameraman is not happy with me. I promised Rapunzel, but I'm a sucker for requests, even if the last one was horrifying. So let us now read together that well known old story, Hans My Hedgehog. What was that you say? You've never heard of this tale in your life? What a coincidence, because neither have I, and we all know how well that ends. Once upon a time, I love stories that start with once upon a time. There was a farmer who had plenty of money and property, but rich as he was, his happiness was not complete. He had no children with his wife. When he went into town with the other farmers, they often made fun of him and asked him why he had no children. Well, that that's just mean. One day he finally got angry and he went home and he said, I want to have a child, even if it's a hedgehog. Not not the first descriptor I would have come up with, although hedgehogs are really cute. Then his wife gave birth to a child whose upper half was a hedgehog and the bottom half was human. When she saw the child, she was horrified and she said, You see how you cursed us? So I looked up baby hedgehogs and look at the little face. But they are pretty weird looking in the first couple of weeks of their life cycle. There's nothing we can do about it now, said her husband. The boy must be christened, but we'll never find a godfather for him. There's only one name I can think of for him, said his wife. Harry? Spike? Sonic? And that's Hans My Hedgehog. Not what I was thinking at all. After he was christened, the pastor said he won't be able to sleep in a regular bed because of his quills. So not true. I don't think they did any research for this story at all. Did you know that baby hedgehogs are born with quills, but their skin is so swollen, so it covers the quills to keep them from harming their mother? It also takes at least 36 hours for the swelling to go down and the tiny white quills to appear. Also, the quills are only really spike up when the hedgehog curls into a ball like a tiny spiky drawstring bag. I've done so much research about hedgehogs on the great Google rabbit hole that now I kind of want one. Darn you, story! Therefore, they gathered together some straw, spread it on the floor behind the stove, and laid Hans My Hedgehog on it. His mother could not nurse him because he might have stuck her with his quills. Now, story, we have already talked about this. Baby hedgehogs have swollen skin so as not to hurt the mother. Also, unless they ball up, their quills lay down, and with a little care, she wouldn't get hurt at all. I wonder if the authors were thinking about porcupines. So, he lay behind the stove for 8 years. No, he didn't. Within a couple of weeks, he would have started to wander around and forage for insects and fruit. Did the Grimm brothers even see a hedgehog? I think I need to complain to the manager. And eventually his father got tired of him and wished he might die. Wow, that is awful. That is why you never give pets as a present. Anyway, he just kept lying there. One day there was a fair in town, and the farmer decided to go to it. And he asked his wife if she would like anything. Some meat and a few rolls, she said. That's all we need for the house. Then he asked the maid, and she wanted a pair of slippers and stockings with clocks. With clocks. Back to Google I go. Oh, oh yeah, that is not what I was thinking of at all. Wow, now I want some too. I don't want a hedgehog. Darn you, story. Finally, he went and he asked his son, Hans My Hedgehog, what would you like to have? A better father? Father, he said, just bring me back some bagpipes. When the farmer returned home, he gave his wife the meat and rolls he had brought. Then he handed the maid the slippers and the stockings with clocks. Finally, he went behind the stove and gave Hans My Hedgehog. It's just too long to say that every time. So from now on, whenever the story says Hans My Hedgehog, I'm just going to say Spike. He gave Spike his bagpipes because, nothing engenders love like learning how to play the bagpipes. Upon receiving the bagpipe, Spike said, Father, please go to the blacksmith and have him shoe my rooster. Then I'll ride away and never come back. No, 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 do not put shoes on animals. We learned that in the last story. The father was happy at the idea of getting rid of him and had his rooster shod. When the rooster was ready, Spike mounted it and rode away, taking some donkeys and pigs with him, which he wanted to tend out in the forest. Once he reached the forest, he had the rooster fly him up into the tall tree, where he sat and tended the donkeys and pigs. I wonder if it was the same tree that the princess with the star on her forehead sat in. Ooh, I wonder if it's anywhere near the Hitchcockian tree of dead mother, or the dwarf's house, or the enchanted cottage. This is a very busy forest. He sat there for many years until the herd was very large, and he never sent word to his father of his whereabouts. As he sat in the tree, he played his bagpipes and made beautiful music with bagpipes. One day, a king who had lost his way in the forest came riding by. When he heard the music, he was so surprised that he sent his servant to look around and see where the music was coming from. The servant looked around, but all he could see was a small animal sitting up in a tree that seemed to be a rooster with a hedgehog sitting on top of it playing music. And the servant immediately ran and got his eyes checked, followed by therapy. The king told the servant to ask the creature why he was sitting there and whether he knew the way back to the king's kingdom. Spike climbed down from the tree and said he would show him the way if the king would promise, in writing, to give him the first thing he met at the castle courtyard when he returned home. No danger in that, thought the king. Spike can't understand writing, so I can write whatever I want. The king took pen and ink and wrote something down, and after he had done this, Spike showed him the way, and the king arrived home safely. When his daughter saw him coming from afar, she was so overcome with joy that she ran out to meet him and kissed him. Then he thought of Spike and explained to her what had happened. He had been in the forest and forced to make a promise in writing to a strange creature who had demanded to have the first thing the king met upon returning home. Well, all of that is technically true. I do take issue with the adjectives. It seemed more like a polite conversation when I read it through. Huh. The creature had been sitting on a rooster as though it were a horse and had played beautiful music on bagpipes. The king told his daughter that he had, however, written down that Spike was not to get what he demanded. Anyway, it made no difference since he could not read. The princess was happy to hear that and said it was a good thing since she would never have gone with him anyway. Spike continued tending his donkeys and pigs. He was always cheerful, sitting there perched in his tree, playing his bagpipes. Now, it happened that another king came driving by with his servants and courtiers. He, too, had lost his way. All right, look, I'm willing to accept a bagpipe rooster riding hedgehog, but two lost kings in the same forest might be a king too far. And the forest was so large that he did not know how to get back home. Oh, I know. You just take a left when you get to the Hitchcockian tree of dead mother, and then a right when you reach the enchanted cottage. He too heard the beautiful music from away, and you know, yeah, of course he could hear it from far away. The bagpipes are loud, like really exceptionally walk in front of your troops before a battle loud. And he told the courtier to go and see what it was. It was bagpipes. Bagpipes are kind of unmistakable, really. So the courtier went to the tree and saw the rooster sitting there with Spike on its back, and immediately he gave up drinking. Uh, I'm sorry. And the courtier asked him what he was doing up there. I'm tending my donkeys and pigs, but what can I do for you? The courtier asked him whether he could show him the way out of the forest, since they were lost and could not make it back to their kingdom. Spike climbed down from the tree with his rooster and told the king that he would show him the way out if the king would give him the first thing that he met when he returned home to his royal castle. The king agreed and put it in writing that Spike was to have what he demanded. I would have said asked for. When that was done, Spike rode ahead of him on the rooster and showed him the way. The king reached his kingdom safely, and as he entered the castle courtyard, there was great rejoicing. His only daughter, who was very beautiful, ran towards him and embraced him. She was very happy to see her old father again, and asked him what in the world had kept him so long. He told her that he had lost his way, and that he would not have made it back at all had it not been for a strange creature, half human, half hedgehog, who had helped him find his way out of the forest. The creature had been sitting astride a rooster up in the tree and had been playing beautiful music on bagpipes. Seriously, bagpipes. You keep using this word beautiful. I do not think you know what beautiful means. In return for his aid, the king had promised him that the first thing he met him at the castle courtyard. Now, he was very sorry that it had happened to be her. However, out of love for her old father, the princess promised him that she would go with him whenever he came. In the meantime, Spike kept tending to his pigs, and the pigs had more pigs, and those pigs had more pigs, and eventually there were so many that the entire forest was full of them. That seems bad. Spike decided he no longer wanted to live in the forest, and he sent word to his father, I'm guessing by carrier pig, to clear out all the pigsties in the village, for he was coming with such a huge herd of pigs that anyone who wanted to slaughter one could have his pick. On hearing this, his father was distressed, for he believed that Spike had long been dead. Nevertheless, Spike mounted his rooster, drove his pigs ahead of him into the village, and ordered the slaughtering to begin. Phew! That wasn't me, by the way. That was the story. The story actually says, "Phew!" Look, right there in the text. Phew! There was such chopping and butchering that the noise could be heard for miles around. That sounds terrible. Afterward, Spike said, "Father, have the blacksmith shoe my rooster one more time. Then I'll ride away and never return as long as I live." You said that last time. His father, glad that Spike would never return again, had the rooster shod. When Spike departed, he set out for the first kingdom, but the king had given his men orders to stop anyone who was riding on a rooster and playing bagpipes from entering the castle. That's very specific. I wonder how many things they stopped. "Well, sir, I may be riding a rooster, but I'll have you know this is a piccolo I'm playing." If necessary, they were to use guns, spears, or swords. So, when Spike came riding, they attacked him with their swords. But he put spurs to his rooster, and the bird rose in the air, flew over the gates, and landed on the ledge of the king's window. He called the king to keep his promises and give him the princess. Otherwise, he would take his life and his daughter's as well. Then the king implored his daughter to go with Spike to save their lives. So she dressed herself all in white, and her father gave her a coach with 6 horses, splendid servants, money, and property. She got into the coach and was followed by Spike, with his bagpipes and his rooster by his side. Ah, a hedgehog and his rooster. Classic. Then they said good-bye and drove away, and the king thought that this was the last they would ever see of his daughter. But things happened much differently. When they had gone a little way, Spike took off her beautiful clothes and stuck her with his quills until she was covered with blood. Yep, they clearly had never seen a hedgehog. "This is what you get for being so deceitful," he said. "Go back home. I don't want you." Then he sent her away, and she lived in disgrace for the rest of her life. Seems a bit harsh. Meanwhile, Spike, carrying his bagpipes, continued his journey on his rooster. Eventually he came to the second kingdom, which belonged to the other king, and he had led out of the forest. However, this king ordered his men to present arms and greet him by shouting, "Long may he live!" After that, they were to escort him to the royal palace. When the king's daughter saw him, she was startled and frightened because he looked so strange. Yet there was nothing she could do, she thought, for she had promised her father to go with him. Therefore she welcomed Spike, and they were married. After the wedding ceremony, he led her to the royal table, where they sat down together and ate and drank. When evening came and it was time to go to bed, she was quite afraid of his quills, but he said not to be scared, because he had no intention of harming her. Then he told the old king to have 4 men stand watch in front of the bedroom door and to make a big fire. For when he got inside and was prepared to go to bed, he would slip out of his hedgehog skin. Wait, what? The men were to rush in quickly, throw the skin on the fire, and stand there until it was completely consumed. Seriously, what? When the clock struck 11, he went into the room, stripped off the hedgehog skin. How? Has he been a furry all this time? Why has no one mentioned he could do this before? It seemed important. And left it on the floor. Right after this, the men came, picked up the skin, and threw it into the fire. When the fire had consumed it, he was set free and lay in the bed just like a human being. But he was pitch black, as if he had been burned. Gross. Then the king sent for his doctor, who rubbed him with special ointments and balms, and gradually he became white and turned into a handsome young man. That feels oddly racist. When the princess saw that, she was happy. The next morning, they got up in a joyful mood and had a fine meal. Then the marriage was performed again, properly, with Spike as a human, and the old king bequeathed his kingdom to Spike. After some years had passed, Spike, with his wife, drove to his father, and he told the old man he was his son. The father, however, said he had no son, though he once had one. But he had been born with quills like a hedgehog and had gone out into the world. Spike revealed himself to his father then, and the old man rejoiced and went back with him to his kingdom. That's nice of Spike, all things considered. Well, I guess the last 2 lines should be the end, but nope. My tale is done, and now it's on the run. Wouldn't the end have been easier? Honestly, these stories are so very weird. Every time I read one of these stories, I think, this is such an odd story. Surely it's been completely forgotten. And then my editor goes to do a Google search and she says, nope, there's a ton of art, a TV show, and it inspired a section of The Witcher on Netflix. And I think, I do not understand the world of people. Well, if you would like to see more of these, hit that there notify bell, like, comment, and subscribe. The cameraman has threatened my life if I don't read Rapunzel next, so that will be the next story. Unless I get a request. What? What do you mean you heard that? I'm sure no one will request anything. Request something. And it will all be fine. Make a request. Next week, Rapunzel. Probably.